Hello, I'm Claudia Paiva, and I am part of the MS-14 cohort at McDaniels, and this is my autoethnography project. In this slide, it's where I will place the video. Um, my video is my project, and the slides are just a guide. I have key points, or key points on the speaker's note. Um, for me as a guy and to reference, but my project it's really the video. So, as an first, I wanted to introduce myself. This is my family in 1996. The second picture is my class picture in sixth grade in Peru in 2001, and then my parents, my family, and I moved in 2005. And this last picture is not last picture, but this picture, it's at Kennedy High School where I graduated from, and this last picture is the most recent one. This is my fifth year teaching, and I just wanted to commemorate the virtual year. So I grew up a little bit about me. I grew up in urban community in Miraflores in Lima. That is a median upper class, and although we lived in this affluent community, we did not enjoy the privileges there because we were only able to live there because of my grandparents from my mom's side. Um, my parents were both working parents. I remember vividly that we were always they were always counting every penny, um, literally, because we didn't have enough money. And then once my brother and we were close to graduation, they decided to move to the United States because they're, they knew there were better opportunities here. So in 2005, we all moved together. Um, I entered the ESOL program at John F. Kennedy High School, and I think I that was the first time where I realized how much my people classified me because of my race. Like every where I went, it will say, "Oh, where are you from? Oh, so you're Latina." Oh, I mean, race was a topic here in the United States. I don't think I felt that way in Peru. And looking back now, I can see my privileges. I can see my privileges in Peru, whereas here I was coming, as an immigrant, and I had zero privileges, and that's where I felt that um, oppression in a way. I grew up, it, when we came here, I always grew up with this mentality of, we should be grateful because the United States has given us education. We need to work hard, and college is the only way to be successful. So study, 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 so you can get scholarships, and then you can get education, and then you will be successful. I don't think I ever had another option um, on how to become successful, at least from my parents' perspective. Um, and I used to look down on people that wouldn't have a degree. But then, then my mind changed, but that was very engraved in me. I went on to graduating from Kennedy in 2008. Went to Montgomery College, went to UMBC, graduated from there, and then I pursued a master's in education, and I graduated from UMD. Um, I think unconsciously, before I entered this McDaniel's project, this project, I always felt that the one of the reasons why I wanted to become a teacher was because I wanted to make my students feel that they deserve the education, that it wasn't a favor, right? Like I felt that, like my experience, I want my students to feel like they are very deserving of the education, that just because they're immigrants, or sometimes their status is not, it's an issue, they still deserve a chance at uh, at education, and success can look in many different ways. It can be many different things, and not just college, like I grew up, um, thinking. Um, so I think this class has definitely helped me view things a little bit differently. Some familiar concepts that I came in before, when I started taking this class, was this mirrors, windows, and doors perspective. When I read this Bishop article, I knew, I have read it before, and I knew this concept. I knew the kids who they need to be, they need to feel represented in the classroom, and I think that is huge, right? I also knew that about these contributions and added ethnic additive approach are mostly used in MCPS. This is from the James Banks um, reading, and how we here in MCPS, that we celebrate, quote unquote, celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and how that's not enough. Um, how that's just very superficial, and we don't validate our students' culture. I always knew, and I always felt since I was a student, that this one size fits all approach is oppressive, and teachers need to advocate for students. Um, I remember being an ESOL student, and I don't remember. I remember feeling, like it's a little off, like I don't belong here, and then thinking, well, of course I don't belong here. I just came from Peru. This is not my culture. It's okay to feel like this because it's not my country. But yes, that was part of it, but it wasn't all of it. And I don't think, while my teachers try to make connections with me, I don't think the work and the material and the concepts from school stick with me. Some new concepts and my areas of growth have been this cultural capital, from this Yoso reading, and how we only right we only validate certain aspects of, or certain intelligences, right? Certain knowledge, very academic, and if it's not that way, then everything else that a student knows is thrown out the window and not celebrated in the class. Um, so I think, sorry, yeah. I also learned that while I am, I have very like equity thinking, I am still acting and I still work in this oppressive system, and I need to watch my practices, because oppression, like the last bullet point, it says right there, oppression is not always intentional and at the forefront of the minds of educators. This is from the quotes that one of the quotes that we talked about in our first module. It was very like, like, wow, I knew that. I knew that it's not always, on top, that's not my way of thinking when I create lessons, but um, it's that's true. It's not intentional. When I do it, it's not intentional, and so that's one area where I've been able to check on myself again and again and again. Um, some of my artifacts are here. My first one, and at the bottom here on the speaker's notes, you can see the course objective that I connected to. This first one is an email from Miss Chicas, who is a, the director of the nighttime program. In this nighttime program, it's an after-school program for ESOL students. It's a support program. We teach them a little bit of math, a little bit of English, but reinforce those ideas and then we help them with their homework, right? It has been extremely extremely helpful for the students because um, they need this extra processing time. They need to reinforce the concepts that they are taught in this new curriculum for ESOL. And in one of this, in the last meeting, I had to advocate and I had to say something to the administrator and the principal because I was looking at these other classes, piano and PE, these elective classes that the students, the ESO 1 students were taking. And I was evaluating their classes, uh, and I could tell that they were not planned with ESOL students in mind. And so, we had a conversation about that, and then we had a follow-up meeting about it. And it was interesting to see the reaction, from the leaders at my school. I think now that I am taking these classes and all this information, it was very helpful using the information that I learned in class when having these conversations in the follow-up meeting. So yeah, that was one of them. The second one was the course objectives that I attached it to was develop culture relevant practices to assure access and opportunity for all students. I am now teaching this honors biology for ESOL students, and this you know this is the second year we're doing it, and virtual classes have been challenging for everybody. So one thing that we have done, it is to translate the material into their first language. We have four languages other than English in the class. We have Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Bengali. And we the class is very bilingual, but we have English and Spanish. But we every time we can put announcements, so we send emails, or we put comments, because they're ESOL ones, and they're very new to the country. They're very they're very new to English. We try to put these important messages, not the whole lesson, but these important messages in their native language, and that gets their attention immediately, right? When I make the comments in Bengali about a homework or an assessment, he my student, he immediately replies, in English. But it gets their attention. I think that's sometimes, we have to validate that language. Another artifact I attached to the same objective. It's to validate uh, to validate their knowledge. Background information. This is a screenshot of a the opening questions for a lesson, and every week we have an opening questions for every lesson. And we just want to get their background information. Very often we hear teachers say, "Ugh, ESOL students," or not just ESOL, but a lot of students, but especially ESOL students. Oh, did you know they're like blank pieces of papers? They have no background knowledge. They come blank from their countries, and it's such an overused statement. And we decided, with my co-teachers, that we wanted to value and acknowledge their previous knowledge from their country and what they bring to class. And that's why they're very broad questions. There, the picture is very broad and ambiguous, because there's no wrong answer. We ask them a question, and then whatever they answer, we say, oh yeah, we're going to see this in this lesson, where you're going to see that at the beginning of the lesson, you're going to see that at the end of the lesson, because we're able to take their information, their knowledge, and connect it to a part of a lesson. Or sometimes we say, that's an interesting point, right? We will, we will talk about it at the end and see how, even though it might not relate to what we're talking today or this lesson, that see how we can apply it later on. um, and it takes that anxiety of a new topic away, away from them. It's like, oh, okay. We say, okay, so you know a lot, so we're going to teach you, here's new information about what you already know. And that has been extremely helpful with the students, because they don't feel like it's something completely new. you know um, my fourth artifact is attached to that same objective, where develop culture relevant practices. I honestly wanted to put a picture of our Zoom meetings. It's three teachers. It's two science teachers and myself, an ESO teacher, who planned this ESO biology classes. And this is a picture of a text. Um, and it was very clear from the beginning that we had to, to pick and choose the themes or the topics that were important for the students to learn. And I am always editing the information and the materials that they are creating, to make them more easily accessible. Because I am not the expert with the bio content. They say, okay, we have to touch A, B, and C, and we're creating these activities. And I'm like, oh, great, perfect. Once they have chosen, I am like, all right, let's make it easily. And I modified their projects, the assignments, the homeworks, the readings, to make it more I picture, so they can like follow the lessons, and if they're absent, they're still able to complete the assignments even if they were not in class. So that was one. And we're always meeting. We meet every Tuesday and Friday, um, for these lessons, and then we text all night, right? All day, all night about that. um, my last artifact, it's attached to the my last course objective: act with intent to transform their practices and to be more culturally reflective. um, Identity, I besides biology class, I also teach ESO 2 and 3, right, in one class. ESO 2 and 3. And identity, it's a unit that I have been doing with ESO 2 from my very first year of teaching. Um, and then I realized that after all these classes and all these readings and the videos and all the material I have that I have read, I wanted to take a I wanted to be brave enough and create a lesson, same lesson, right? Identity, but from a new lens, right? And I was, instead of telling them, oh, this is identity, and like how, you know, it'll be like just one question of, oh, how do you define yourself? Oh, A, B, and C. Great, perfect. Let's move on. I created this lesson more of student center, and have their opinions and their reflections guide the lesson. If if you look here, it would have the agenda, right, what we're going to talk about, then our discussion, which is very open, and the question, um, what is identity. I will tell them these are the definitions, right, and this is what is intersectionality. But then the activity would be, okay, now let's explore um, all these different aspects of your identity. I think here, I moved it here, but this is the activity, and they had to speak. They were practicing their speaking, and then they were like, it was very interesting to see their reactions of like, oh, I guess let's try. Yeah, that's part of my identity. That's a little bit of who I am. Um, and not that this was, not that this needs, it's perfect, but it was very nervous. I felt nervous creating this. I felt nervous presenting this, um, because I really wanted to, make them feel and acknowledge their identities in the class. Of course, in this revision, that I can, I know where I need to change and modify, but um, the tools in this class have guided me and pushed me to, push my planning creativity and do what's really right by my kids. So that's my last artifact. Um, some further reflections and next steps. I think in these are my conclusions. Right, I really need to reflect on my practices and change them. Right, while a lot of this, not a lot, but you know, some readings were very like, yeah, it validated my beliefs and it validated how I felt as an educator. I realized that I still work in this oppressive system, and therefore I act as an oppressor even without knowing it. So my reflection needs to be consistent. This culture of humility needs to be practiced every day, and I need to reflect, and modify and change my lessons, as I evolve in my thinking. Another reflection here. It's the second bullet point that once we're back in the classrooms, this may be easier, but I still need to find a way in which my students can feel welcome in my class. One little thing I did was putting my pronouns in my emails and putting my pronouns in the classroom, so they're in my MCPS, um, because it gives a voice to uh, my students who do not feel comfortable with me telling them he or she. Um, that these little things, these little practices, here and there, that can be very meaningful for my students. Once we're in class, I think it'll be a little bit easier, when they can see my classroom. But definitely acknowledge little things like that. I need to watch for my microaggressions. um, I didn't think much of my comments, until this class, this program, where I, you know, realized that, oh yeah, that wasn't nice, even though I meant it as a compliment, like, oh wow, look at you, you got a great grade, like, why did I look so surprised? um, Again, it wasn't, never my intention, but that's how it might have come across. Um, so I definitely need to reflect on my microaggressions, and make them less and less in my classroom. And then the last bullet point here, it's to understand my students' cultural values and respect them in class. Um, I am Latina. I'm an immigrant, an ESOL student. I went through the ESOL program, and that connects, and I connect very easier than other ESOL teachers. Um, but I think it's important to not assume just because I'm Latina, and our stories are very similar, they're not the same, and their cultures are different than mine, and I need to respect those differences and not just say, oh my god, like, I went through it and I did it, why can't you? you know there's certainly different times. So those were my reflections. And then the last slide here was the references and the concepts that I used to explain my artifacts and my presentation. And that's it. Thank you. Let me stop this.